barrel. So there's a three-way machlokes on the pickled products. One says that as long as the first one of the three is kol l'chayis min asoda, no longer available in the wild, all become asa because each one has a nice and tam to it. He said it has a taste to it. Then you have the second one, who's the more lenient one. And he says that as long as you have that third one still around, even though the first two are chalas, since they have partially its taste, that's enough. And then you have Reb Gamliel that says, Kol shekolu minim min asodi yivad minim min chavis. You look at each vegetable as a separate entity. As far as we're concerned, they're not pickled together because it's only a nice and time from one to the other. It gives a taste. And that does not create a circumstance of prohibition for the din of beer. And the Mishnah states, before we go on further in this Mishnah, halacha kidvar, we passed on Gamliel, and we saw that some say it's the Mishnah, and some bring down that it's not the Mishnah, but like the Yerushalmi quotes it as a brisa. Now, there's a very interesting question here that's negay for kol hashas kula, because we know there's a concept of tam ke'ika. For example, you have basa b'cholav. You cook meat and milk and meat together. So as long as the cholav is nice and tam in the basa, it's awesome. As we say, tam ke'ika. Or you have a piece of nevela that goes into something and it's nice and tam, it's awesome. Over here, according to this way of understanding it, we say that the tam is not like the ikka. Why over here is it a different type of situation? Why should we make this type of a determination that it doesn't work? We always say tam ki ikka is the raisa, is from the Torah. So he brings down over here. Tais Yom Tov Makshi asks, Ma'ach shenifscha aloch Gamliel. We paskin now like Reb Gamliel, that the halacha is that you basically ignore the concept of the taste that's in there from the other vegetables, and you look at each vegetable as a separate entity. That if it was in something else prior to beer, because we don't rechenzach with the tam. Even though, let's say the peppers that went into the taste of the peppers, the flavor of the peppers that went into the tomatoes, we don't take into consideration flavor. And therefore you're not chayv beer. This case of Eifam Mefarish Rav Le'el. Previously we had Sheshviz Iser Shalei B'Bina B'Nois Tam. Niblu B'Min Achlef Ne'abir. That before we said that there is a concept of nice and tam. In Mishnah Zayin, Perik Zayin, Mishnah Zayin, it does say it. So what's the distinction over here? In one place it says we do say it, in one place it says we don't say it. So the Taisus Rebbe Kiva Ege answers this. Shekavonis harav is sheshvius iseres b'nois and tam l'inyan dini kedusha shvius. That we say that there is a concept of nice and tam is only vis-a-vis that if you have a vegetable that has a kedusha shvius and you have a vegetable that doesn't have a kedusha shvius, and the taste of the vegetable of kedusha shvius goes into the item that doesn't have it, that's enough. Just like you have basa b'cholav, cholav goes into basa, it's problematic. Over here also, it creates that the whole vegetable in its entirety has kedusha shvius because of that nice and tam that was put into it. Therefore, you'll have a kedusha shvius that you can't go ahead and destroy it, and use it as merchandise. But beer is different because this is a sidebar or a outcome of Kedusha Shvis. Something over here that technically beer is a halacha unto itself, according to this Tais Rebbe Kiva Ega. And even though under normal circumstances you say that there's a halacha of Nois and Tam, over here there's no halacha of Nois and Tam. Sheken chiv beer eina chal al tam habalu shenechshe k'mavuyi kvar. And that's how he explains this Tais Rebbe Kiva Ega. But now the plot thickens. That Hachazon Ish Mevaya al pi Aram ben Adar v'Arash. Chazon Ish gives an explanation over here into this Rebbe Gamliel that we say there's no concept of Nois and Tam. Shir Gamliel poitem b'Irakim nivla Tam shel Shvius b'min acha sheyesh b'kedusha Shvius. That's, you have two vegetables. They both have, quote unquote, the sanctity of Shvius. So therefore, you say that the one that has kol l'chayis minasoda, we don't take into consideration into that new vegetable. So if you have the pepper going into the tomato, and the pepper is already kol l'chayis minasoda, and the tomato isn't, we say we don't care. Tomato can still be eaten as if it's before beer. Because at the end of the day, this tam that went in from the pepper originally into the tomato, and you have a kedusha shvius here that's still in the field. So from the drushes of the psukim, you'll understand that it's still, you have a ribi akra to say there's no problem. Let's say a completely different thing. Now let's say you have peppers that have a kedusha shvius, and you have tomatoes that don't have a kedusha shvius. Then afin min achulin kain b'soda. The chulin is all over the world. You can't say it gets off the hook for beer. Why not? Only something that else has a kedusha shvius will say that you don't have to worry about this mambi of the first one. You don't have, if it's the 6th and the 8th year, they don't go into the equation vis-a-vis the beer. Okay. That's how he explains this to Chazon Ish. So basically, we're coming now, because of the psukim that we dashed yesterday, this halacha, that beer, there's no halacha of Nois Tam, vis-a-vis beer, is only a halacha exclusively in beer. Normally, throughout the Torah, we say Nois Tam is something you have to take into reckoning. Over here, we're saying if it's something that has a din of beer, if both of them have a kedusha shvius, we say that you can say, because of the Ribi Akra, that it can still, we don't have to worry about that one that was called l'chayis minasoda. It's like a halacha Moshe Sinai. Just like you have sometimes a halacha Moshe Sinai, Xeris HaKosev, so you say you don't have to worry about it. Over here, it's what's called the exception to the rule. But under normal circumstances, we always say Nois and Tam is also if it gives a taste into something else. Now, we had till now 3 opinions. It's Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Yeshua, and Rebbe Gamliel. Now comes a brand new understanding that if you think that these were lenient, some of them, like Rebbe Yeshua, we're going to come to Reb Shimon now, who is really lenient. And Reb Shimon says, Kol Yorek is Echad Lebir. That when it comes to vegetables, we don't say there's a species of tomatoes, and there's a species of carrots, and there's a species of peppers, and there's a species of cucumbers, but they're all under one category. And Oichlin B'Yerigila, you can continue eating as is, without any problems of Shviyis, to say this as Manbiyah, Ad Sheyichlu Sigarios, which is a type of vegetable, but is based in Taifa, that has left the valley of Beis Netoifa, which is really the last place. So you go until the very end to worry about it. So you don't have to worry about it according to Reb Shimon until late in the season. Now, let's see this, and we're going to afterwards learn a whole different shot over here. Reb Shimon Oime Kol Yorik Echod Labir. L'das Reb Shimon Lo Nosnu Chachom Zman Bi L'chol Min Yorik B'fnei Atzmai. The opinion of Reb Shimon is that you don't make separate categories vis-a-vis vegetables. El Kol Min Yirokos, we say all vegetation Nechshav K'min Echod. We put it on the one large heading. When it's end of the run for the last item that is ended in the field, it's still mutalechos kulum. Till then you can eat whichever one you want. Even though the peppers were gone 3 months ago and the tomatoes were gone 2 months ago, if the cucumbers are still around, no problem. If you went ahead and mixed them up and you pickled them together, there's no problem. Because we say there's no isra of beer over there. Now, some ask a very, very reasonable question. Comes out, vegetables, there's no such thing as a zman beer. I mean, until the very end. Some find a difficulty here. I'll give you Reb Shimon on the words of Reb Shimon's opinion. There are certain types of vegetables that it's a never-ending process. There's no beer. You're going ikka haluf ashoita, like we had previously. The luf, how do you say? I don't remember how we call the luf again already. But a type of vegetable that's called the luf hashoita. So this is something that is very difficult to understand. But according to Reb Shimon, even though this is a very good question, until these type of species Sigarius is no longer seen in the valley of Beis Netoifa. Now, Regilo hu min yerik sheyesh le'leches rabba. Regila is a type of vegetable that has a lot of moistness to it. It can last a long time in the earth. It doesn't get spoiled. And even if you won't find it in one area, it grows in hidden places. Even though sometimes you might not see it, but it's there, you just can't tell where it is. It's going to be in a hidden place. It's not good enough just to see what you can find. You have to realize that there's a certain place you got to go to. Otherwise, it's there, you just might not know about it. Where do you find that it ends, meaning it's the end of the run? When you know when cigarius are finished. We're not talking about cigars over here. And what is cigarius? Min yerik echod. Min yerik ach, it's another vegetation. And where do you find it? The biggest base in the Teufa. What's so special about the value of base in the Teufa? Shumokim lach b'yosem. It's a very, very damp area, moist area. If this place has been dried out and you can't find cigarius, you won't find it anywhere. Okay, that's how this is being learned. Okay. This ends this Mishnah, and we're going to start now Mishnah Vav. Okay. The next Mishnah is is brought down in Rambam Hilchos Shmita Perik Vav Halach Yud Gimel. And what it says over there is we're going to be mevayer bekame mini perus yirokis emisuz man beiru. We're going to talk about different types of fruits and vegetables when the actual time of beer comes. Shagi is manzeh, and when it comes, nesru b'achila achiyasib hamitzvahs beer. You cannot eat it until you actually do a beer, the maisa beer. And what is the maisa beer? Hainu sheyafkirim, as we mentioned previously, legaba other types of halachas as well. You have to be mafkarit. After you abandon it, you can go. You can go ahead and take it over again. Again, the time of beer happens. When the wild animals, not the domestic animals, but when the wild animals do no longer eat it. Now, the Mishnah starts out, let's say you're taking a wet type of grasses. It's a vegetable style, it's made out of grass. So the Mishnah says, until the sweet ones, there's different types of grasses, I guess the sweet ones become dried out. And it's interesting, he says over here that the Zman of Asovim Lachim vis-a-vis Asovim Yaveshim, moist grass and dry grass, Shizman Abiyish al Lachim Uzman Kodem Izman Abiyish al Yaveshim, comes earlier. And he brings down Hine Esav the Kan Ein Stam Esav Shehem Stam L'Machal Behema. We're not talking about grass that you're going to use for fodder for animal eating. Esav Yidu Bizmano. This is talking about a particular type of grass. Sheyesh Shehoyi Nechel La'odem B'yesh L'Behema. This is a grass that was eating exclusively by. It was used for human consumption, vis-a-vis other types of grass that are used for animal consumption. They're technically one type of a species. The wet ones fall and they're no longer attached to the ground when they when the ground is no longer moist. The wet ones won't create a situation of asov yavation. There are those that don't get detached. They actually stay in the ground even after they get dried out. And they're called the dry grass. Because they're in a place where the heat and the wind create that it gets dried out. And that's what's the way they are harvested. That's the dried ones. Now, we're going to see over here that there's a distinction between wet and dry, and we're going to see that even though they look the same, but one is from the wet type and one is from the dry type, and they'll have two different types of kolos achayis min asod.